And go ahead. Excellent. Okay.
Let me get my headphones on.
And just for clarification, I'm looking straight at you and kind of,
Yes.
Ignoring
all right,
our presence completely.
wonderful.
And just for clarification, the only affirmation I can give you is visual, not verbal.
Okay.
And so I'll be doing like
Mm-hmm.
this, but I won't be going, and oh, that's interesting, and I won't be doing that.
Okay.
So I'll be completely visually kind of giving affirmation, okay?
No problem.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having
We
me.
really appreciate it. We're going to start out by just asking if you give us your full name and also spell it as well.
Absolutely. Candace Hardnett, and it's Candace. Hardnett, Hardnett.
Thank you. And then your preferred pronouns would be?
She, her.
Thank you. And then do you mind talking a little bit about yourself, where you were born, and kind of, if not in Savannah, kind of how you came to Savannah and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. I was born and raised in Remington, Virginia, actually. Fauquier County, Virginia. Well, actually not raised completely there until I was about 9 years old. I lived in Fauquier, and then my mom and stepfather moved us to Spotsylvania County, and then later on to Culpeper County, which is all around the same little area there. And so I've grew up in Virginia and Northern Virginia, and ended up going down to Florida. College and life took me as far south as Florida, and made a little pit stop in North Carolina there for school for a little while, and ended up going and joining the Marine Corps after 9/11, and joined the Marine Corps March of 2003, and went to basic training right across the bridge here at Paris Island, and then ended up going being stationed in California for all 5 years of my Marine Corps career, 29 Palms, and then Camp Pendleton. Ended up getting involved in ministry while I was in the Marine Corps. I was actually the squadron lay leader there, and was involved in the church that I was a part of in San Diego for quite some time, and felt as I was getting out of the Marine Corps that it was time for us to venture out and to start a ministry of our own, and through prayer and trying to figure out where the Lord was going to take us, Savannah was dropped in our spirits, both my wife and I. Erica Hardnett is her name. Heard Savannah loud and clear, and brought Savannah as the option that we thought that the Lord was sending us, both of us unknowing of what the other would say. Ended up confirming to one another that Savannah was the location that we should go and start ministry. Now, of course, we did some, as I would call it, reconnaissance work. Wanted to make sure that, first of all, that there was nothing like what we would offer already established here. I don't believe in duplicating efforts, and had there been something already established, certainly we would have, if we were to come at all, joined forces and been a part of that. But there were no African American congregations that were, at the time, that were servicing the needs of the LGBTQ community. Any African American church that we found also had a very strong stance against homosexuality, transgender people, and so on and so forth. And any LGBTQ affirming ministries that we found at the time were also not servicing the needs of and to just put it frankly, the black church, and the vibe and the culture that is so richly ingrained in our faith communities just was not being represented. So that's how we got here.
And what year was that you actually showed up on the doorstep?
We got here August of 2008.
So you've been here a little while.
Oh, we've been here quite a little while, yes.
So, yeah, I don't want to go back, but I do want to go back, actually. Any chance you come from a military family?
You know, my grandfather served in the United States Army. Now, I did not get to meet my grandfather. He and my grandmother had my mother at older age. Grandmother was over the age of 40. She was about my age, about 44. My grandfather, 10 years her senior. And so by the time I came along, they were quite old. My grandfather passed away 2 weeks after my birth. But it was very much ingrained in me as a child, the service to the country that my grandfather did. And it was ingrained in me then also that I too might pursue a career in the military to do the same.
What was your specialty?
Well, I was a computer geek. I was, they have actually phased out what I did, but I was a TBMCS systems administrator. And so, in other words, I network computers together, a specific system that would look at the air, what was happening in ground and air. And be able to put those two things on one screen so we could see the troops on the ground as well as the troops in the air and be able to offer assistance to those individuals as they needed.
How did you meet your wife, if you don't mind my asking?
Oh, yeah. In San Diego, there's a church there. It's called Christ Chapel of North Park. And I ended up going to a Pride celebration, and they were in San Diego, and they were a part of, had set up a booth there and were outreaching to the community. And I met the church there. I didn't really meet my wife. I met the church and got interested and ended up attending later on. And over the course of probably one of the first people I did meet was Erica, honestly, after being there. And we became fast friends, accountability partners. And, a couple of years later, started to date, and the rest is history.
Absolutely, that's great. And then tell me a little bit about being in Savannah. So you come in 2008, and you've done a little recon. And what are the first few years like here? I mean, what's kind of the developmental story of what you've, what you're doing today?
Sure.
What's the journey?
Yeah. Well, we wanted to know who's doing what and what the need is. And I'll be honest, when we first reached out to some folks, and at this time MySpace was the social media of the day, and folks on MySpace were all, yes, come, we'll be there. We came, and I have yet to this day met one of the people from MySpace that said that they would really love for us to be here. We kind of started from scratch, and not a bad thing. We set up at a Pride event. So happened that about a month after we got here, Pride was happening. So we set up at a Pride event right there in Johnson Square. And met some folks and took some names and email addresses. At that time, we didn't even have a building. We didn't have a concept of a building. Being honest, we didn't have money for a building, But what we did was we had a living room. And so we opened our living room for Bible studies and conversations, and we had several people start to attend and become very interested in, well, when will we start having an actual church service? And from there, we tried out some hotel room type of deal, and such a blessing. One of the members of the community, her name is V. Dorian, had an aunt who had a building right over there on Victory. I can't remember the cross street, but it was called the Decisions Business Center. Just a little building. And she said, y'all are welcome to come here. And we set up the building as a church sanctuary every Sunday. And her name was Miss Eleanor. And God rest her soul, she passed away just last month, matter of fact. But she opened those doors to us. And we started having service with members of the community that we had met from that Pride celebration. And more people started to come, people from the neighborhood, and got to the point where we started to be able to bring in a little more money, and moved over to Windsor Forest from that point. And the Windsor Forest, I can't remember what it's called, over on Greenbrier, I believe it's what it is. Windsor Forest Hall is what it is. And started having church there. Now, there was already a church established there. In fact, we know the pastor, and he's a really nice man. And so we'd have service after his church service. And we moved around eventually got to the Muse Arts Warehouse, where Jen He ran and Mark had a theater. Now that's since closed, and when it closed, we had to find another location. But for many years, I would say that's when we really established ourselves as a church community in that Muse building. And we would hold services on Sundays, and eventually ended up moving to Telfair Road, which wasn't far from the Muse after the Muse closed. Then COVID happened. and that put a little damper on in-person worship service. And we moved to an online platform to which we still keep today. Now we'll go back a little bit because one of the first things that we did do, even way back in 2008, 2009, was to broadcast our online our services. And so I looked at that as going back to the basics, honestly, going back to our roots. Whenever we had to go back online, we knew how to do it because that's what we did to begin with.
How do you describe yourself denominationally?
We're non-denominational, a bit interdenominational, I would say, in the sense that if people are coming with traditions that are still resonating with them, that we certainly affirm those Christian traditions and belief systems. I don't believe in telling people what to believe. I believe in allowing people to have the information and for them then to decide for themselves via scripture. I believe in a firm foundation in the Word of God. But beyond that, we can look at many passages, and from one denomination to the next, someone may believe that being baptized, you do it in a certain name other than another name. Another may believe in sprinkling versus submersion. And I certainly am not one to dictate to someone that it must be done this way. I believe that it is in our own hearts as God speaks to each one of us individually to make those determinations.
If I were to come to church, what would it look and feel like?
Well, I would hope it would feel like home to you. I want agape to feel like heaven, I've always said. And then when we get there, it's going to be everybody. It should look like everybody. It should feel like everybody. Everybody should be welcome. So when you walk through the doors, you will find people as dressed up as any liturgical service of the Roman Catholic faith. If you come through the doors, you may see someone in a full suit and a vestment. But at the same time, you may also find someone in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. And we don't mind. We affirm both, depending on, and we do that because we don't know the story of what's happening. Someone may be struck by the Spirit to come to church, and we don't want the hindrance to be, well, I got to go home and shower and change first. If it's a Sunday morning at 11:55, church starts at noon, and you're passing by, and the Spirit so leads you to come through the doors, well, come on in. And if you didn't have anything on, we'd drape a little towel over you and you sit you right there, and we'd still have a Holy Ghost good time with you. So.
And on a given Sunday, how many people are in church? What's it? Yeah.
We've dwindled quite a bit, just being post-COVID. Now at one point, my answer would have been, anywhere from 40 to 50 people. Even previous to that, I might have even said 70 when we were over in the Windsor Forest and in the Mews. Now we're probably looking at about 15 to 20. Now our online community is still thriving. Online at any given Sunday, we'll have between 20 and 30 extra online people that have tuned in, whether it's live and they're watching along with us during the live broadcast, or will tune in later as some are in different time zones. We have folks all the way in Africa that are watching our services on a weekly basis. Folks in London watching our service on a weekly basis. Folks in Hawaii, and I know that's still America, but it is a 5-hour difference, waking up sometimes at 5 a.m. to be a part of the service, and other times needing to sleep in a little bit and maybe catch the service a little later.
And then, if I were to come to service, would it be? You mentioned Black Church earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, tell me what it feels like. Tell me what it's like to be in the room.
Yeah, energetic. I mean, it's upbeat. It's free. We don't mind if someone wants to stand up, shout hallelujah, put your hands up, or if you want to quietly worship in your pew, you're free to do either. No one's going to look at you strange for either direction that you take, very much family oriented. We have a lot of families that are part of the church. We don't have many kids. We don't have the capacity to actually run a full, children's ministry, which would require adults to leave the service to go and do like a children's service. But there are children present. Try to make it as entertaining as possible for them so they don't get too bored with me. But yeah, it would feel warm. One thing I can say is that every person that's crossed through the threshold of agape says that they can feel the love that we have not only for one another, but for the newer people that we're meeting. We're very interested in the people that come through the doors. We want to know their, as much as they'll tell us, their life, where they're from, what brought them to us, and, what they're looking for, and all of those things, because we truly believe in sowing into folks and having their lives also impact us in a positive way. I feel like we can learn from absolutely every person from every walk of life, and that's kind of the goal there.
What sorts of stories do you hear from people about why they've come to your congregation? I mean, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Why do people choose to come to be with you?
A lot of times people have a love for God. They want to know their Creator. They're looking for a place where they can feel comfortable, no matter what they look like, who they love, what their family dynamic is, or what they've done in their past, and feel comfortable. One of the things that I try to stress is that we are to be non-judgmental. My past brought me through a very different path than some folks, some pastors. I've been in the world. I was in the Marine Corps. There's a lot of culture that comes with Marine Corps, and that's very much opposite in many ways to who I am today. I'm not ashamed of that past. Previous to the Marine Corps, I also had more history, again, that I'm not ashamed of, but rather it's different than who I am right now, which means that when people sit before me and come to our church and perhaps are trying to make a change of life, whether that is through some form of substance abuse, or whether that is bad relationships, or whatever the case may be, that I can truly look at someone and say to them, when in all honesty, I've probably been exactly where you are. I understand. I'm not passing judgment on you. Let's see, here's how I, got out of this, or here's where the journey led me. How can I help you to do something similar? Where can I help to lead you and support you to do the same? That's my goal, to use my past even to help folks, get to a place of peace. Because honestly, that's what it is. Honestly, for me, it's been a peaceful journey. It's getting to a place of peace.
Do you hear horror stories from people about
Yeah.
You hear horror stories?
Absolutely.
Do you mind talking about that? What people are bringing with them as far as the way they've been treated other places?
Absolutely. I've had folks, I've had folks sit before me crying and say that with the children that are struggling, whether that be with abuse, substance abuse, or, some form of, as teenagers do, struggle, and been blamed. Well, your son or daughter would not be going through this demonic attack if you weren't a lesbian. If you weren't gay. I've had people tell me that they were brought forward in a full service church service to be prayed over and embarrassed in front of a congregation about their sexuality or gender identity. I've had people having to get married, men, and this is especially with some of the male congregants that were forced from the church to marry as a way to correct their sexuality. And if nothing more, if it can't be corrected, at least you can put on the facade of being straight. I've heard, all of these things are so damaging. People come in so hurt, and don't have a lot of trust when it comes to even me, someone that is sitting in a church setting, of course, and even to the point where there are some people that won't come to church because it triggers them. It's harmful still, and even if it is a church like ours, it's very harmful. It's still triggering to them. And so there are people that are a part of our church that have never been to our church because of that.
Um, help me understand a little bit then about when you hear these sorts of stories. I mean, what do you do?
Yeah. Listen. I listen. I try my best to now one thing I don't have direct, I would say, experience with is the feeling of that homophobia within church. I didn't experience that. I later forced myself to experience it. I'll explain that in a second. But the church I grew up in was in Northern Virginia. And even though we were in a rural community, it's very well known in that area that you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And in many ways, being in Northern Virginia also means a very progressive type of area, even in the rural communities. And a lot of LGBTQ people attend churches, and to start downing people based on sexuality would be just horrible. I mean, we had so many people within the congregation that, and of course back in the 80s, and we're talking the 80s here, it wasn't a big thing anyway. But everybody knew that whoever and their friend or roommate, and that's just kind of how it was. It was the culture of the church and how we grew up. And so I didn't experience the sermons of gay people are going to hell. I didn't experience any of that as a child. And I think I said, I ended up denouncing Christianity at the age of 12. So I left the church. And so I missed that whole portion of time between 12 and 24. So we're talking between 1992 to 2004. I missed that portion of time where the rise of anti-gay church happened. And when I came back into church, it was an LGBTQ affirming church that I came into. And so I did miss that. But I knew right then, as I was coming back and as I knew that God was leading me to become a pastor, I said, I'm going to have to experience this one way or the other. And I thought being in the Marine Corps would have helped because, I served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And but I told. The problem was I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And I was like, man, forget what the law says. Hey, y'all, just so you know, this is who I am. And they said, we know, Hardnett, and kept on moving, and no one cared because the culture of the Marine Corps even changed long before the laws did. So even my higher ups knew what was up. They just didn't care. And so in any case, I was like, well, I got to figure this out. I need to experience what this feels like, because how am I ever going to minister to somebody if I've never even gone through it? I went to Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary for school. First started off at Liberty University for my undergrad in religion. I had to be closeted there, of course, because it's Jerry Falwell, Lynchburg, Virginia. And I did it online, so I will say I had a little grace there. But I mean, those conversations, those discussion boards of, and I'll say in my undergrad, it was more so women in ministry. We're talking, I guess, 2005 time frame. The focus was women in ministry. Should we allow women in ministry? By the time I went to go do my master's, I took a little time in between. It was 2010, and I went to go do my master's. They were talking hot and heavy. Almost every class had something to do with LGBTQ people in the church. And that's when I really experienced, and for my master's degree, being in seminary, I had to go to Lynchburg physically every so often to be a part of like maybe a 2-week process to go to school and be in the classrooms. And so I experienced it. I experienced the feelings of closetedness, and I experienced the feelings of sitting amongst the, feelings of rejection. I experienced all of that. Now I certainly can't compare that to the real experience of living this from childhood on, but enough that I could feel what someone may be feeling in those instances.
Let me ask, does your congregation organize itself in a way that it does what might be thought of as mission work, or might as a social action committee, or how does the congregation relate to the larger physical community outside of it, and then the general community of Savannah?
Yeah. We used to be really big in the homeless community and helping the homeless pre-COVID. A lot of things have changed post-COVID, and mainly because and I mean, it's about a year has passed, but since we've been back in physical location, but we're still getting the gears running again. And so I'll be talking a lot pre-COVID here. That we were very big in the homeless community and helping the tent cities to service them. And, Michael Chaney's church also was and does a lot of work within those communities. So we almost kind of, we take this pocket of people in this area, and you take this pocket of folks in this area, type of coordination, and not so much where we wrote it down, or anything like that, but we kind of had an understanding of, okay, if they're servicing that community there, then the need is less than over here where maybe they can't get to them, and so we'll be here. Now, a lot of those tent cities have since been closed, and so beyond that, we also are very much activist minded. One of the first things that happened when we came here to Savannah was, I believe his name was Kieran Daly, if I'm not mistaken. I can't recall his name, but he was a gay man who was beaten severely by two Marines on Johnson Square. And one of the first things that happened, that happened about maybe 6 months after we got here, we heard about it and we showed up, and they asked me to speak there. And that was kind of my Savannah debut, because I was a Marine. And for two Marines to do this, it's pretty intense, and I've been active ever since, so we've marched, we've rallied at City Hall for domestic partnership benefits, and we've been at every march that we possibly could be at. We've gone all the way up to City Hall asking for marriage equality. We did a little sit-in here in Savannah before marriage equality had passed, and applied for a marriage license and was denied because of our gender. And so all of these things are things that we have been a part of and continue to be a part of.
You kind of moved in a little bit. Do you think of yourself as political in any way?
I try to separate. Even though our church, we're not a 501c3, and so we very well can be very political if we so choose. However, just like I don't believe in dictating to people how they should believe, as far as I believe in giving folks the parameters. Like, here's the parameters of what the Scripture says, teaching them how to study for themselves and letting them have some thought in this process. Same thing politically. I don't think if anyone were to go to my Facebook page, I don't think it's a secret of who and what, where I support and where I personally vote, and how I personally vote. But at the same time, I don't really endorse candidates publicly, because I don't want anyone blindly just saying, well, because pastor is voting for this person, I'm gonna vote for them too. I would prefer people research candidates, and so politically, in the sense of I will run a voter registration and tell people it's election season. Make sure your voter registration is intact. If you haven't registered, get out there, register. And when we were a larger congregation, we used to even run little, if you voted, bring your sticker, we put it in a hat, pull out, and somebody wins a tablet, that sort of thing, because we want folks to vote. I don't care who you vote for, on a personal level, I certainly do, but, on a spiritual level, I don't care who you vote for, as long as you exercise that right.
Who's the poorest person in your congregation?
The poorest person? Me? No, I'm just joking. I used to be. I promise you I used to be. As I didn't take a salary from the church. And so, yeah.
How long did you not take a salary?
Years. I didn't take a salary for the first, I still don't take a salary. I take a stipend. But and at the time when I say me, I had lost my job at one point, and it was by the grace of God that we were sustained, and especially during COVID, and the bills kept coming. But so I don't know if I can call anyone by name in particular right now. Um, Everyone is pretty much employed. I can't think of now. We did recently have some folks that were experiencing homelessness. They moved away, and no longer part of the congregation. So I would say that they would have been at the time. They were living in a car, and kind of we would try to help them get off the streets and into a hotel every now and then as much as we could, to get them kind of stabilized. So.
What about young people? Are they finding you and finding sort of refuge in your congregation?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm always so blessed to, because when I started, I was young. Like honestly, I was about 30 when I started ministry. I was 24. In San Diego. And by the time we came here, I was 30 when we opened the church, and so roundabout. So I was young. Time has passed me by, and I don't know what happened, but I guess I was 28 when we started the church. But in any case, now I'm realizing I'm old, but I'm still blessed that I still can relate to some of the younger people to feel comfortable to come and listen to this middle-aged girl preach.
And, is everybody who comes congregationally, would they identify themselves as a gay person?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No,
Okay.
yeah. We have a variety of people. We have some transgender people, some folks that are, identify as same gender loving, others who are straight, full rainbow, full spectrum.
And then are there examples of the way that congregationally you reach out into the neighborhood or the community and offer, support or are helpful outside of the church walls?
And pre-COVID, absolutely. Like I was saying, especially via the homeless ministry outreach we would do. Now, post-COVID, we're still getting ourselves back up and active. And, Agape in itself is an outreach in the sense that we offer a service in many ways to the community, LGBTQ community especially, to have a place of refuge that they might not find anywhere else. And the affirmation that they may not find anywhere else just because of the way some folks' theology is set up.
Yeah. Let me ask these guys if they've got things they want to.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's very far reaching.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything personally. Mickey?
Mickey, can you?
No,
I
no,
think we're good. Yeah, it's good.
I mean, the only thing that really comes to mind is maybe the question about the larger Savannah community and how you see your role now. When you first came, there wasn't a equivalent, congregation, and so you saw the need for yourself. Mm-hmm. How do you see Savannah? Has it changed? Has there been an effect that you think you've had? And what do you think the landscape? How is it different today?
Yeah. Should I look at Tom
please,
as I'm saying this? All right. Absolutely. One of the first things I said when we got here was one day I don't want this church to even need to exist. I want us to either change our entire model and be a different church, or I want us to just phase out and not be existent. We're heading that direction, and it doesn't make me sad. It's just a new change of direction. I believe it's very much in order, but I'm seeing more congregations accept and affirm and bring in LGBTQ people in a very big way, in a very public way, that we did not see 15, 16 years ago. Our city has done amazing things under the leadership of our mayor. He is the most, in my opinion, and I love Mayor Jackson. I love Mayor Otis Johnson, but Mayor Van Johnson has done, in my opinion, the most for the visibility and acceptance of LGBTQ people. Now I know there, and someone may argue, now under Mayor Jackson, we did pass many ordinances. So I don't want to take away from that at all. Like I said, I love the work that all of those mayors have done for the LGBTQ community, but I see a stark difference in the way the landscape of the city has changed under this administration. And it may just be because the world is changing, and we had to build on something. So certainly not to take away from anyone else's, the strides that they made, but we're seeing it come full circle now. It's actually happening. And there's not a need for some of the things. I mean, marriage equality has passed, so we don't have to go fighting the city for anything. We have more things in the works nationally than we did before. And so, yeah, I see churches opening their doors that didn't open their doors before. I see people that would have had no other option other than agape having options now. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because I'm not the only pastor in Savannah. And everybody can't hear my voice. Everybody won't listen to me, or can. I'm a little bit different than some folks, I don't preach the same. You're not gonna get a whole bunch of hooping and hollering out of me all the time, And some people like that. That's not the way I preach, and so I'm not everybody's flavor, and that's okay. People should have a variety to choose from, and I'm seeing that happen.
That's a great ending. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
No problem.
Wow.
Okay, I think that's a cut. Unless there's something else you'd like to add?
No, I'm
That's great.
I think it speaks well of the city.
Yeah,
I mean,
that makes me feel better.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Really, yeah.
To hear it.
yeah. I see a change there.
Well, I know that occasionally I go to Christ Church, not because I'm